If I could burn just one day from my memory, erase it completely like a glitch in an old VHS tape, it would be the afternoon I left my wife for her best friend. Not because I regret leaving, at least, that's what I used to tell myself. But because I remember her face when I closed the door behind me. Not angry. Not even surprised. Just tired. Like she'd already seen how it would end. But I didn't see it coming. Not back then. We lived in Cary, North Carolina, a quiet suburb with tall pines and too many golden retrievers. I was a project manager at a mid-sized construction firm. My wife, Elena, worked part-time at a local law office while juggling dinner parties, charity runs, and somehow remembering my mother's birthday better than I did. We weren't broken. At least not in the obvious ways. There were no late-night screaming matches. No empty bottles hidden in kitchen cabinets. Just distance. A subtle, creeping silence that took over dinner conversations and car rides. Then came Jenna. She'd been Elena's best friend since high school. Dark auburn hair, an easy laugh, and a confidence that made people orbit her without even realizing it. She ran a small boutique downtown and always knew which wine to bring or which joke to tell. I didn't plan it. God, I really didn't. It started when Elena asked me to help Jenna with some shelving in her shop. One thing led to another: coffee, shared complaints about life, one too many drinks after a networking mixer, and suddenly, I was calling Jenna when I should have been calling my wife. The worst part? It felt good. Like waking up after years of sleepwalking. But let me rewind. That Sunday morning, 2 months before I packed my bags, Elena made blueberry pancakes. She hated pancakes. Said they always sat like rocks in her stomach. But she made them anyway, because she knew I liked them. She poured my coffee, sat across from me, and smiled like she hadn't noticed the lipstick smudge on my collar the night before. "Everything okay?" she asked softly. "Yeah. Just tired." She nodded. "You've been working a lot." "Yeah." I didn't meet her eyes. I was too busy remembering the feel of Jenna's hands in my hair the night before. Elena didn't push. She never did. That was the thing about her: she'd wait for you to come around, give you space. And I mistook that for indifference. 2 weeks later, I came home late again. Jenna had called me during lunch, upset about a fight with her supplier, and I'd spent the afternoon helping her reorganize her backroom inventory. She cried. I held her. We kissed. Again. When I opened the front door to our house, Elena was on the couch with her laptop. She looked up, gave me that same tired smile. "There's chicken in the oven," she said. "I already ate," I replied. She nodded and turned back to her screen. That's when I started telling myself we were over. That she didn't care. That Jenna was different, more alive, more invested, more present. And I believed it, because it was easier than facing the truth: I was cheating on a good woman because I didn't know how to say I was lost. The night I left, it wasn't dramatic. There were no packed suitcases by the door or a trail of broken glass. Just a quiet conversation in the kitchen. "I think I need to go," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. Elena looked at me over the rim of her tea mug. "To her?" I nodded. She didn't cry. Didn't shout. Just stood up, walked over, and placed a hand on my chest. "I hope you find what you're looking for, Ben." Then she turned and walked out of the room. Jenna welcomed me like I was the missing piece to her puzzle. She moved her clothes to make space in her closet. Bought my favorite IPA without me asking. Told me how she'd always thought we were meant to be. For a while, it felt right. We laughed more. Went on weekend trips. She made me feel needed. And yet, 3 months in, little cracks began to show. Like how she hated my dog and left passive-aggressive notes when he shed on the couch. Or how she snapped at waiters if they brought the wrong order. Or how she always seemed to be performing, smiling too wide at dinner parties, laughing too loud at her own jokes. And then, there were the whispers. Jenna had told me Elena didn't appreciate me. That she never stood up for me when her friends talked behind my back. But one evening, while Jenna was out, I found her old phone tucked in a drawer. And I shouldn't have looked, God knows I shouldn't have, but curiosity has teeth. What I found hit me like a truck. Months before we even kissed, Jenna had been texting a friend. I'm going to make him mine. She doesn't deserve him. Another message, 3 weeks before I moved in. He thinks I'm the good one. All I had to do was wait. That's when I felt it. That tight grip in my chest. Like realizing the house you built is sitting on a sinkhole. The next day, I asked her about it. She laughed. Actually laughed. You went through my phone. Why did you say that stuff? Because it was true, she said, stepping closer. She took you for granted. I just helped you see it. But you manipulated it. Her face darkened. I did what I had to do. That night, I didn't sleep. I lay awake thinking about the time Elena drove 2 hours to bring me a new suit after I forgot mine at home before a client pitch. How she stayed up with me while I crammed for my PMP certification. How she always waited up, even when I came home late and reeking of guilt. And how I left her for someone who saw love as a competition. The next morning, I got a call. It was Matthew, a mutual friend who didn't know I'd moved in with Jenna. Hey, man, he said, hesitant. I know it's none of my business, but Elena's moving out. Putting the house up for sale. That caught me off guard. She didn't say anything to me. Matthew paused. She probably didn't think you cared. I did care. More than I realized. Later that afternoon, I drove by the old house. I told myself I just wanted to see it. One last time. For closure. But as I turned the corner and saw her out front, talking to a real estate agent, something shifted inside me. She looked different. Stronger. Like someone who had finally stopped waiting. I stayed in the car, watching her laugh at something the agent said. And I realized she wasn't tired anymore. She was free. And I wasn't. Not even close. I didn't go home that night. I parked 2 blocks away from the old house and sat there in silence, the engine off, the windows fogging slightly from my breath. Elena had looked light. Like she'd been carrying something for years and finally set it down. I should have felt happy for her. But I didn't. I felt like a man who'd been running toward a door only to find it closed, locked, and bolted from the inside. When I finally drove back to Jenna's loft, the place felt unfamiliar. The walls too white. The candles too perfectly arranged. Her laugh from the hallway sounded too rehearsed, like a scene she was replaying for the 100th time. She kissed me on the cheek, asked where I'd been. I told her I'd gone to clear my head. She smiled like she knew I was lying, but didn't care enough to press. That night, I dreamed of Elena. Not in some romantic, cinematic way. She was just standing in our old kitchen, stirring pasta. She looked up, saw me in the doorway, and said, "What are you doing here, Ben? You made your choice." I woke up before I could answer. The days passed slowly after that. Jenna seemed different. Like she'd won a prize she no longer valued. She stopped trying to impress me, and I stopped pretending not to notice. I started staying late at work again, even when there wasn't much to do. It was during one of those late evenings at the office that I ran into Travis, Elena's older brother. We hadn't seen each other since the separation. I expected anger, maybe a punch in the jaw. But he just looked tired. "You look like hell," he said, sitting on the edge of my desk without being invited. "Thanks," I muttered. "Appreciate the honesty." He paused, studied me. "You see her lately?" I nodded. "Drove by the house a few days ago. She's moving downtown. Got a new job at a firm in Raleigh. Big step up." I didn't know that. And it stung that I didn't. "I heard," I lied. Travis leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "You really think Jenna's better for you?" I stared at him. "You want me to say I was wrong?" "No," he said quietly. "I want you to figure it out for yourself." Then he stood and left. That weekend, Jenna went to visit her sister in Asheville. It was supposed to be a girls' weekend, and I didn't ask questions. I welcomed the silence. For the first time in months, the apartment felt like mine. I wandered the rooms, aimless, restless. I passed by the spare bedroom, the one Jenna used as a closet overflow, and stopped. Something was pulling at me. Not in a dramatic, movie-like way. Just a quiet nudge in my gut. The room was tidy, filled with racks of shoes, scarves, and handbags. But in the corner, barely visible behind a stack of unused throw pillows, was a small gray storage box. Not labeled. Not locked. Just there. I don't know why I opened it. Maybe I was hoping for proof. Maybe I was looking for a reason to leave. Maybe I already knew. Inside were old photos. Dozens of them. Jenna and Elena. High school. College. Beach trips. Birthdays. But as I flipped through them, something didn't sit right. In one photo, Jenna stood behind Elena, her hand resting on her shoulder, but her smile, it wasn't joy. It was possessive. In another, a printed-out email from over a year ago, Jenna had highlighted a line Elena wrote. "I think Ben is pulling away, but I don't know what to do. I love him too much to give up." Beneath it, in Jenna's handwriting. "Of course you do. And you always get what you want." Not this time. My stomach twisted. I dug deeper. A folded piece of paper, Elena's handwriting again. A letter, never sent. "Jenna, I know something's going on. You've been different with Ben lately, and he's been different with me. I want to believe you'd never do something like that, but it's hard to ignore the signs. If there's anything left of the friendship we used to have, please don't destroy what's left of my marriage." It was dated 6 weeks before I left Elena. I dropped the letter and just stood there, the weight of it all sinking in. She knew. She knew, and she still let me go. Still wished me well. Still made blueberry pancakes on Sunday morning. I sat on the bed, staring at the floor for what felt like hours. When Jenna came back Sunday night, I didn't say anything at first. We ate dinner in front of the TV, some crime docuserie she liked. I could barely hear it over the sound of my heartbeat. Around 10 p.m., I turned to her. "Did you keep that letter from Elena?" I asked. She blinked, confused. "What letter?" "You know which one." A long silence. Then a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Ben, you're digging through my stuff now. You manipulated both of us." She shrugged. "So did you. Or did you forget whose bed you were sneaking into while you were still married?" I stood. I made a mistake. A big one. But I didn't plan it. You did. Her face hardened. And you're just now realizing that. I grabbed my jacket. "I need some air." "Where are you going?" I didn't answer. I just walked out, the door slamming behind me. I didn't know where I was driving. Midnight found me parked in front of a 24-hour diner we used to love, Elena and me. The kind with squeaky red booths and a jukebox no one used anymore. I sat there, hands gripping the steering wheel, staring at the neon sign flickering open like it wasn't sure it meant it. And that's when my phone buzzed. A number I didn't recognize. But the area code was local. I answered, expecting a wrong number. But the voice on the other end was unmistakable. "Ben." Elena said softly. I froze. "Yeah. Yeah. It's me." Silence stretched. "I didn't expect you to pick up," she said. "Why are you calling?" "I found something. In one of the boxes you left behind." My heart thudded. "What is it?" Another pause. "Something you should have seen a long time ago." She didn't elaborate. Just gave me an address. Not our old house. A different one. Small apartment complex near downtown Raleigh. "Can you come by tomorrow?" she asked. "Yes," I said before I even thought about it. She hesitated. "I'm not sure it'll change anything." "Maybe not," I replied. "But I need to see it anyway." We hung up. And for the first time in months, I felt something unfamiliar. Hope. But also fear. Because I had no idea what she'd found, and part of me wondered if I was even ready to know. I couldn't sleep that night. The city outside my window kept moving, cars passed, lights blinked, someone laughed down the block, but inside me, everything was still. Stuck. Frozen in the silence that comes after a conversation you never expected to have. Elena had called me. After all this time. After I broke her trust. After I tore down everything we had built. And she sounded calm. Not angry. Not cold. Just sad. That scared me more than if she had screamed. The next morning, I drove to her new apartment on the edge of downtown Raleigh. Not the suburbs we used to call home. Not a house with a yard and porch swings and the scent of cut grass on Saturday mornings. This was a small building, 3 floors, tucked between a coffee shop and a bike rental store. A different kind of life. A freer one, maybe. I climbed the stairs slowly, my heart heavier with each step. I didn't know what I expected. A confrontation. A breakdown. Maybe forgiveness. Or maybe just the kind of clarity that doesn't feel good, the kind that confirms you really did ruin something you'll never get back. I knocked. The door opened almost instantly. And there she was. Elena. She looked different. Not because of some big change. Just real. Comfortable in her skin. Her dark hair was pulled back in a loose bun, she wore a soft gray sweater and jeans, no makeup, no performance. Her eyes, those eyes I used to know better than my own hands, met mine, and for a second, we were just 2 people who had once loved each other deeply. Before it all fell apart. "Hi," I said, my voice catching more than I expected. She stepped aside. "Come in." The apartment was simple, lived in. A few boxes still against the wall. Plants on the windowsill. A mug with a chipped handle. The kind of place that didn't try to impress you. "I made coffee," she said quietly. "Hope you still take it black." I smiled, surprised. "Yeah. Still do." We sat at a small wooden table near the window, the morning light soft on the floor. The silence between us wasn't hostile, just unfamiliar. After a few sips, she got up, crossed to a nearby shelf, and pulled out a manila envelope. She placed it in front of me. "I found this when I was cleaning out the garage." It was buried in an old Christmas decorations box. I didn't recognize the handwriting at first, but then I remembered. I frowned, confused. "What is it?" "It's a letter," she said. "From Jenna. To me. Never sent." My fingers trembled slightly as I opened it. The paper was creased, a little yellowed at the edges, like it had been sitting in the dark for years. And the handwriting, it was unmistakable. Jenna's. Big, loopy, always trying too hard to be elegant. I started reading. "Elena. I know what I'm doing is wrong. I know I shouldn't want what you have. But I've spent my whole life standing in your shadow. People don't see it, but I do. You've always had the love, the patience, the attention. You're the one they adore. And I'm always the second act. The friend, the funny one, the fallback. Ben was never supposed to be part of this. I didn't plan it. But then he started pulling away from you. And when he talked to me, really talked, I saw something. I saw how lost he was. How much he needed someone to listen. And I became that person. At first, I told myself it was harmless. We were just talking. Just friends. But I started wanting him. Not just for revenge. Not just to take something of yours. But because with him, I didn't feel like your sidekick anymore. I know if this ever comes out, I'll lose you. Maybe forever. But I also know that for once in my life, I want to be the first choice. Even if I have to steal it. My breath hitched. I looked up at Elena. "You never saw this?" She shook her head. "No. I think she wrote it but never had the guts to send it. Maybe she was planning to tell me. Or maybe she just needed to get it out." I leaned back, heart pounding. So she admitted it. It wasn't just falling into something. She wanted it. She wanted to hurt you. Elena nodded slowly. I think part of her always did. But the truth is, I saw it coming. I just didn't want to believe it. I looked at her, really looked at her. Why didn't you say something? Why didn't you fight me? Her eyes glistened, but she didn't cry. Because I loved you enough to let you go. I thought maybe you'd find something with her that you couldn't with me. And maybe, if I stepped back, you'd be happier. That's not love, I whispered. That's sacrifice. She gave a sad smile. Sometimes they're the same. We sat there for a long time. She told me about her new job, a legal assistant position at a nonprofit helping low-income families. About her move. About the books she was reading. And I listened like a man starving for the sound of her voice. Before I left, I turned to her. Elena, I don't know if there's any way to fix what I broke. I don't even know if I deserve that. But I want you to know I see it now. All of it. I see what I gave up. And I see what I chased, and how empty it turned out to be. She looked at me for a long moment. Ben, I'm not the same person anymore. And neither are you. I nodded, my throat tight. I know. But that doesn't mean I hate you, she added. I don't know what's next. Me neither, I said. But maybe that's okay. As I left her apartment, I felt something strange. Not closure. Not exactly. But the beginning of understanding. The kind that hurts. But also heals. Back at Jenna's, things had shifted. The silence was sharp now. When I walked through the door, she didn't even look up from her phone. You were gone a while, she said. Yeah, I replied, tossing my keys on the counter. She didn't ask where I'd been. And I didn't volunteer. I stood there, watching her. The woman I left everything for. The woman who had written a letter she never meant to send. A confession disguised as justification. You ever think about who you used to be? I asked her quietly. She glanced up. What's that supposed to mean? I mean before all of this. Before us. Before you decided you needed to win. Her expression changed, not guilt, not sadness. Just annoyance. Like I was bringing up a subject that bored her. Don't get philosophical, Ben. You made your choices, too. Yeah, I said. But I didn't lie to myself about who I hurt. She stood, brushing past me toward the bathroom. You're spiraling. You should talk to someone. Maybe I would. Maybe I already had. Because standing in that apartment, surrounded by things that weren't mine, I realized something. Jenna didn't just steal me from Elena. She stole me from myself. I never thought a photograph could feel like a betrayal. But that's exactly what it felt like when I found it. It happened 3 days after the letter. 3 days of pretending everything was fine with Jenna. Smiling over dinner, answering her questions like we were still two people who understood each other, still living the story we told our friends and families. But the mask was slipping. I couldn't stop thinking about Elena. Her voice. Her letter. Her silence. I couldn't stop seeing the truth behind Jenna's charm, the calculations behind the affection, the way her compliments felt like currency, traded for loyalty. I used to think she made me feel special. Now I realized she made me feel owned. That afternoon, Jenna was at a yoga class, and I was in our apartment alone, trying to find the tax documents she insisted were in the drawer near the old calendars. Typical Jenna, everything always slightly disorganized, but in a way that suggested she wanted you to rely on her to find it. I opened the drawer. No tax forms. Just papers. Magazines. Old bills. And then, tucked in the back, a small photo album, the kind with plastic sleeves and sticky pages. I almost didn't notice it. But something about the leather cover made me stop. I pulled it out. Opened it. The first few pages were old vacation photos, Jenna in Miami with a cocktail, posing with friends I didn't know. A college beach trip. Her hair shorter, sunburned shoulders, wide grin. Nothing unusual. Then I turned to a page that didn't make sense. It was a picture of Elena. Not with me. Not with a group. Just Elena, sitting in a coffee shop, wearing a navy jacket I remembered she used to love. She was smiling, but not at the camera. Her eyes were down, as if reading or laughing at something someone just said. Next to her was Jenna. Not in the frame. Not posing. But captured in the mirror behind them, standing at the counter, phone in hand, looking straight into the reflection, her face blank. It wasn't the photo itself that chilled me. It was the timestamp. 2 months before we ever split up. Before I ever knew Jenna and I had feelings. Before I thought Elena and I were in trouble. But clearly, Jenna had already been watching us. Capturing moments. Inserting herself into spaces where she didn't belong. Why? I flipped the page. Another photo. Elena at her birthday dinner. A restaurant in Cary, she'd chosen it because it had her favorite scallops. In the background, 2 tables over, Jenna was there. Alone. Staring. There was no way these were coincidences. I felt my mouth go dry. My hands shook. This wasn't just betrayal. This was something deeper. Calculated. Chilling. When Jenna got home, I was waiting. She dropped her mat by the door, smiling like nothing in the world was wrong. You find the tax stuff? I held up the photo album. You want to tell me why you were taking secret pictures of Elena 2 months before we broke up? She froze. The moment lasted 3 seconds. Then the mask cracked. I wasn't spying, she said carefully. That's dramatic. Then what were you doing? Following her to cafes. Sitting in restaurants alone, taking pictures. What the hell is this, Jenna? She crossed her arms. I was documenting patterns. You said things weren't right between you two, but I knew you were lying. I needed proof. Proof of what? That she wasn't the woman you thought she was. I laughed, dry and angry. You were obsessed. She didn't deny it. Instead, she looked at me like I was a child. You think love just happens, Ben? You think people fall into it like some romantic accident? No. We choose it. We fight for it. And sometimes we have to make hard decisions to get what we want. You mean manipulate people? Gaslight them? Destroy friendships? She was never your match, she snapped. You were dying in that marriage. And you knew it. I just gave you a way out. I stepped back, disgusted. No, Jenna. You didn't give me an out. You gave me a trap. That night, I couldn't stay. I grabbed a bag and left. No destination. Just out. Away. I ended up driving for hours. Through Raleigh. Down to Durham. Then Chapel Hill. The highways blurred together in the dark. Rain started to fall just before midnight, soft at first, then heavy, like the sky was doing the crying I couldn't. Eventually I pulled into a motel, the kind with a flickering neon sign and no questions asked at check-in. Room 217. Smelled like bleach and cheap soap. But it was quiet. I lay on the bed staring at the ceiling, and for the first time in a long time, I let myself feel the weight of everything. How had I ended up here? I had a life. A real life. With a woman who loved me quietly, honestly, fully. Who didn't perform her affection like a magician's trick. Who made pancakes on Saturdays and reminded me to call my mom and held my hand in church when the sermon turned sad. And I gave that up. For a woman who stalked my wife, took secret photos, and played puppet master with our marriage. How many other lies had I swallowed? The next morning, I called Elena. She answered after the 3rd ring. Ben. Her voice. It was like a light in a tunnel. I found something, I said. In Jenna's drawer. Photos. Of you. From before. Long before. There was silence. I think she was following you. Watching. Planning this long before I even knew anything was wrong. Another pause. Then, I know. I blinked. What? I always had a feeling, she said softly. You never noticed, but she'd show up in places. At first I thought it was coincidence. But then. I'd see her car parked across from my gym. Or she'd accidentally text me something clearly meant for someone else. Why didn't you tell me? She laughed, bitterly. Because by then, I could already feel you slipping away. And I didn't want to look paranoid. I thought maybe if I held on tight enough, you'd come back on your own. I felt my chest cave in. I'm so sorry, Elena. She was quiet for a long time. Then, finally, you need to figure out who you are, Ben. Not who Jenna made you, not who I want you to be. You. When you know that, maybe then we can talk about the rest. The line went dead. But something in me had finally woken up. Later that day, I went back to the apartment for my things. Jenna wasn't home. I packed quietly, methodically, like a soldier in retreat. But just as I was about to leave, I saw something else. A small black notebook, tucked behind the couch. It wasn't labeled. Just worn at the edges. Curiosity took over. I opened it. Inside were pages and pages of notes. Dates. Times. Conversations. Transcripts. Of me and Elena. Things I had said months ago. Things I didn't even remember saying. She had recorded me. And there, halfway through, was a name I hadn't seen in years. Maggie T. Spoke to her on March 14th. Connection confirmed. Maggie. Elena's old roommate from college. A woman we hadn't seen in over 5 years. Why would Jenna be talking to her? What connection was she confirming? I stood frozen, the notebook in my hand, a chill running up my spine. This wasn't just about jealousy. This wasn't just about obsession. This was something else. Planned. Executed. Layered. A past I didn't understand was coming back, and it had Jenna's fingerprints all over it. And suddenly, I knew. This betrayal started long before I even met Jenna. You think you know someone. You think because you've lived with them, loved them, memorized the way they laugh or sigh or chew the ends of pens, that you know who they are. But you don't. Not really. And if you'd told me 5 years ago that the woman I left my wife for, the woman I trusted with my future, had planned her way into my life with lies and someone else's name, I would have laughed in your face. But that was before Maggie. Before the conversation that cracked everything wide open. It took a few hours to track Maggie down. I had to dig through old emails, social media, forgotten holiday photos to even remember her last name. Taylor. Margaret Taylor. She had lived with Elena in a tiny off-campus apartment during senior year at Wake Forest. I'd only met her once or twice, bright eyes, big laugh, talked fast. The message I sent her was short. Hi Maggie. This is Ben, Elena's ex. I know this is out of the blue, but I need to ask you something important. It's about someone named Jenna. If you remember anything at all, please call me. I wasn't expecting a reply. She called back in 10 minutes. Ben, she said, voice cautious. I've been waiting for this. That stopped me cold. You know about her? Oh, I know her, Maggie said. But that's not her name. We met the next morning in a small cafe in Greensboro. Neutral territory. Maggie wore a gray hoodie and no makeup, her hair tucked under a ball cap. She looked like someone who didn't want to be recognized. She slid a phone across the table. On it was a photo. Not of Jenna. But of someone who looked almost like her, younger, hair a little darker, with glasses. Smiling. Arms wrapped around a blonde girl I recognized instantly, Elena. That, Maggie said, is the woman you call Jenna. Her name is Natalie. I blinked. What? She was Elena's roommate. Before me. Freshman year. My mouth went dry. You're telling me. Jenna and Elena lived together. Only for 3 months, Maggie said, stirring her coffee. It didn't end well. Natalie was strange. Obsessive. She latched onto Elena like she was her only anchor. At first, it was normal, movie nights, clothes sharing, bestie energy. But then she started crossing lines. What kind of lines? Reading Elena's journal. Showing up to her classes. Going through her phone. Trying to isolate her from other friends. Elena finally snapped and asked to change roommates. After that, Natalie dropped out. Disappeared. I sat there, stunned. She never told me, I whispered. She didn't want to relive it, Maggie said. Said it felt like a bad dream. I was shaking. So how did Jenna, Natalie, come back into our lives? Maggie sighed. I don't know the full story. But I remember when you and Elena got married, she posted a wedding photo on Instagram. A week later, she took it down. Said it gave her a weird feeling. That someone had liked the photo whose profile picture gave her chills. I nodded slowly. Jenna had told me she randomly met me at a conference mixer in Raleigh. That we'd hit it off because we both hated small talk and liked the same old TV sitcoms. What if that wasn't random at all? What if she knew exactly who I was? Who we were? What does she want from me? I asked, more to myself than Maggie. But she answered anyway. Obsession isn't about want. It's about control. If she couldn't have Elena, she wanted to be her. And when that didn't work, she wanted to destroy her. The drive back to Raleigh felt like a dream. My hands on the wheel, the world rushing past, but my brain was stuck on rewind. How many moments in the past 3 years had been part of her plan? The cafe, chance meeting. The late-night talks where she told me Elena was drifting. The subtle remarks, you ever feel like she's not listening? The way she made herself everything Elena wasn't, louder, sexier, more spontaneous. It was all a performance. And I bought a front row seat. I didn't go home. Not to her. I drove straight to Elena's. She opened the door in sweats and a wrinkled t-shirt. Her hair was messy. She looked like she hadn't slept. Ben. I held up the notebook. Jenna's, or Natalie's. Pages of notes. And the photo Maggie gave me. I know everything. Her face didn't change. Not right away. Then her eyes welled. I wanted to tell you. So many times. But every time I started, I'd remember how much you defended her. How sure you were that she was the good one. I'm not sure of anything anymore, I said. She stepped aside. Let me in. We sat at her kitchen table, the silence stretching, filled only with the hum of the refrigerator and the rain tapping against the windows. I told her everything. The photos. The recording. The name. Maggie. Elena listened, hands wrapped around a mug she didn't drink from. I always had a feeling, she said when I finished. But I thought it was just jealousy. Or paranoia. You weren't paranoid, I said. You were targeted. She looked up at me then, and I saw something in her face I hadn't seen in years. Not anger. Not pain. Not even betrayal. Just grief. For everything we lost. I don't know what happens now, I said honestly. But I had to tell you. You deserve the truth. She nodded. Thank you. I got up to leave. She didn't stop me. But just as I reached the door, she spoke again. You know what scares me the most? I turned. That you left me, someone you knew for years, built a life with, weathered storms with, for someone you barely knew at all. I swallowed. I know. No, you don't, she said softly. But maybe someday, you will. Back at the apartment, Jenna, Natalie, was waiting. She stood in the kitchen like nothing had happened. Dinner was cooking. She was playing jazz. Where were you? She asked, smiling. I made your favorite, lemon chicken. I stared at her. You know who Maggie is? The smile faltered. Maggie. Elena's old roommate. Before you. You remember her, right? You called her. Met with her. Confirmed a connection. Something flickered behind her eyes. Ben. No. I don't want another lie. I want your name. Your real name. Silence. Then, quietly, Natalie. I nodded slowly. Why? She looked away. Her voice shook. I loved her. In a way I couldn't understand back then. But she didn't want me. She wanted you. And I. I wanted to be close to her. To know what it was like to be loved like that. So you destroyed us? No, she said, eyes wide. You did that. I just showed you what was already broken. That's not love, I said. She stepped forward, desperate now. But it could be. We could still. I stopped her with a hand. It's over. I packed my things that night. Really packed them. Not a motel bag. Not a weekend escape. A leaving. As I zipped the final suitcase, Jenna, Natalie, stood in the doorway, tears on her cheeks. I never lied about loving you, she whispered. I looked at her, a woman I once thought was my future, and now couldn't recognize at all. I don't think you even know what love is. I didn't go back to Elena. Not yet. Some wounds don't heal overnight. But for the first time in years, I felt like I was waking up. Like the men I used to be, the men who laughed too loud, cried at Pixar movies, burned pancakes every Saturday, might still be somewhere inside me. And maybe, just maybe, I could find him again. You'd think that after everything, the lies, the manipulation, the truth about Jenna or Natalie or whatever her real name was, the worst was behind me. But the thing about secrets is, they tend to breed in the dark. And this one was sitting in a sealed envelope at the bottom of an old shoebox Elena had kept in her closet. A letter addressed to me, dated 6 months before we separated. A letter I was never supposed to see. It was 2 weeks since I left Natalie. I moved into a temporary apartment in downtown Raleigh, small, clean, empty enough to match how I felt. I worked during the day, tried to sleep at night, and kept my distance from Elena. We'd exchanged a few texts. Civil, careful. Like two people walking across glass barefoot. Then one night, a knock on my door. It was Elena. No makeup. Hair pulled back. She held a small box and a nervous smile. I've been clearing out some things, she said. I found this. I think it's yours. I let her in. She placed the box on my kitchen counter and didn't linger. Just a soft, take care of yourself, before turning to leave. But as I reached for the lid, she paused in the doorway. Ben, she said without turning. There's something inside I never meant for you to read. But maybe now, maybe you should. Then she was gone. I opened the box. Old birthday cards. A concert ticket from 2017. A dried flower I once gave her on our first weekend trip. Memories, sweet and sharp. And then, the letter. Handwritten. Unmistakably hers. I sat down, heart pounding, and began to read. Ben. I don't know if I'll ever give this to you. Maybe I'm just writing it to keep from drowning. I've felt you slipping away. I don't know when it started. Maybe it was last Christmas when you said, you feel distant, and I just smiled and said, I'm fine. Or maybe it was longer ago, the way we stopped laughing at the same things. And then there's her. Jenna. I see the way you look at her. The way you laugh more when she's around. How you share those little jokes. I know something's happening, even if you don't call it cheating. But here's the thing, Ben. I don't hate you for it. I know you're confused. I know you're searching for something, excitement, attention, maybe just someone who reminds you of who you were before life got so damn heavy. But I need you to know this, I loved you. I loved you when we were broke and eating ramen in our first apartment. I loved you when your dad died and you cried into my shirt. I loved you even when I felt invisible next to her. But I also know I deserve more than half love. If you choose her, I won't fight. But if there's still a part of you that remembers what it felt like to be us, then please, come back before it's too late. Elena. I stared at the paper for a long time. It wasn't anger I felt. Or guilt. It was grief. Because I had left without ever knowing this version of her, the woman who saw everything, felt it deeply, and still had enough strength to let me go. The next morning, I showed up at her door. She didn't look surprised. Read it, she asked softly. I nodded. I wish I'd read it sooner. She stepped aside, let me in. This time, I didn't sit at the edge of my seat or fidget like a stranger. I sank into her couch like it was where I belonged. Elena, I began, I don't deserve you. I know, she said, then gave a half-smile. But tell me anyway. I let myself believe the worst about you. Because it was easier than facing what I was becoming. Jenna didn't just lie to us, she used the cracks we didn't fix. She nodded. And we gave her space to grow in them. Silence again. Not awkward, just full of truth. Do you still love me? I asked, voice barely above a whisper. Her eyes didn't flinch. I never stopped. I swallowed. But can you ever trust me again? She didn't answer right away. She walked to the window, arms folded. You know what I realized after you left, she said. I shook my head. That I had been holding on to the version of us that only existed in the past. The couple who could conquer anything. I was so desperate to keep that illusion, I ignored the real problems. The distance. The silence. The way we stopped touching without a reason. She turned back to me. I loved you. But I also lost myself in trying to keep you. A pause. I want us back. But not as we were. As something better. Stronger. Real. I stood up. Crossed to her. Then let's start again. Not from where we ended, but from right here. As two people who finally see each other. And in that moment, it wasn't dramatic or cinematic. It was quiet. Two broken people deciding they didn't have to stay broken. We didn't move in together again right away. We took walks. Talked more. Learned who we were now, not just who we used to be. I started therapy. She joined a writing group. And we both deleted every last trace of Natalie from our lives. 2 months later, I got a message from Maggie. Thought you should know, Natalie's been committed. Her sister petitioned after she showed up at her old college pretending to be Elena again. She's getting help now. I didn't feel anger when I read it. Just a strange mix of relief and pity. Because somewhere along the way, Natalie had lost herself so completely that pretending to be someone else was the only way she felt real. A year later, Elena and I sat on a rooftop in Asheville, watching the sunset. She reached for my hand. Do you regret anything? She asked. I thought about it. Regret? Plenty. But not this. Not now. No, I said. Because we survived it. And we chose each other. Again. She leaned on my shoulder. Then maybe it was worth it. I once thought love was about comfort. That if it felt easy, it was right. But I've learned that real love is forged in fire. It's not about perfection or fairy tales. It's about standing in the wreckage and choosing to rebuild, brick by painful brick. Together. And this time, we're not letting go.